Good morning, friends. Now, in this session, we are going to discuss about the material handling and storage under the safety and engineering industries. And for this session, I'm going to discuss about the manual handling. And in the next session, we are going to discuss about the mechanical handling. So, in each and every type of industry, there is raw material, intermediates, final products, waste products, or byproducts. So, all these types of material should be handled carefully by the workers, and that is why this material handling as well as storage is required in every industry. So, what are the steps? What are the safety precautions? What are the standard operating procedures for storing these materials, for lifting these materials, for carrying these materials from one point to another point, or from one location to another locations? So, basically, there are two types of material handling. One is manual handling and second is mechanical handling. So normally nowadays we are using the second one, that is mechanical handling, but still there are some industries where the manual handling is essential, and in some of the industries, due to some limitations, due to some technological changes, we are also opting for the manual plus mechanical. So some industries are preferring the combination of both. In the mechanical handling, the machineries are used for lifting the material or storing the material, that is lifts, hoist, etc. are used for conveying, carrying, lifting and storing these materials. And accordingly, we have to take care about these lifting tackles, gears, conveyors, arrangements, etc. So all these things we will talk in the next session. Now I am going to focus on the manual handling. So what are the contents of these presentations? So kinetics of manual handling, safe methods of lifting and handling, safety precautions while manual handling, lifting and carrying of different objects, safe use of accessories for manual handling, storage and handling of materials, safety in stacking and unstacking, floor and layout conditions, and ergonomics of manual handling and storage. So let us discuss one by one. Now, in every industries, normally you can check this signboard or the poster for lifting the material. So it is called as kinetic handling, the method which minimizes the risk. So to minimize the risk while handling these types of materials, then we have to reduce the time for lifting or carrying or for conveying the material from one point to another. Then we have to minimize the loss of production and ruin lives. So the method of handling and which minimizes these points is called as kinetic handling. So there are 6 key points to kinetic lifting. First is foot position. So your foot position should be appropriate so that you can lift that material, lift that weight with the legs. Unless and until your foot position is not appropriate, then you can't lift the weight on the legs. Then your back should be straight in a position so that the load, the force of this lifting material or the boxes, etc. should not be on the back. Otherwise, it may create stress or strain on the backs. Then palm grip. elbows in and chin in, so that these points are essential to avoid the physical hazards. So the boxes or the material or whatever the package is there, that may create some hazards. So they may have some sharp edges, they may have some material which can easily connect or contact to your body parts, and that is why this palm grip, elbows in and chin in should be there. So these are the 6 points for the kinetic lifting. So promotes good kinetic movement when the load, body test, task and work in unison. Use a test lift, and all these things, all these guidelines should be included in the induction training program. So when a new person is joined to the industry, there is always induction training, and in this induction training, these lifting guidelines or kinetic handling point should be included. So if it is included at the first day only or in the first week or first month only, then obviously that person always remember and recall the techniques or the proper procedure while lifting or carrying the material. Now we will discuss in detail what exactly this kinetics of manual handling is. So while handling these materials manually, your body acts as a machine, because in the mechanical handling, the machine is going to handle, carry, lift all these materials. But when we are talking about the manual handling, it means a human body acts as a machine and they are lifting, carrying all these materials. So this human body acts and use a lever mechanism. So if you are going to use the lever mechanism, which undergoes forces and torque, and if the forces and torque is there, then there is a stress and strain. So if all the calculations are in limits, if the material handling capacity or carrying capacity, lifting capacity with reference to that person is under control, then it is okay. Otherwise, it creates a pain, fatigue or some injury. So there are some adverse effects of this manual handling if it is not followed by the appropriate guidelines. Then they may create a strain, sprain, back pain, cuts, bruises, burns, fracture and non-traumatic injuries occurring after a long time. So you have to follow all these things, and that is why before handling any type of material, before lifting or carrying the material manually, you have to clear what exactly the weight of that particular material is, what type of material is that, what exactly the packing of that material is, what are the physical hazards present while lifting or carrying these materials, and then we have to follow the 6 key points given for this kinetics of manual handling. Otherwise, these points may be generated. Therefore, it is the need that you have to understand what exactly the kinetics of manual handling is while lifting or carrying the material. Now, some of the investigations, some of the research is already done, and some researchers are still doing the research on these types of lifting or carrying techniques. So what exactly or what will be the or what should be the improvement while handling these types of materials, especially when we are talking about the manual handling, because many industries still prefer the manual handling as far as their conventional methods and conventional plant is there. So with reference to these types of material, they have to handle these types of material manually only. And in some of the cases, or in each and every industry it is not feasible to apply the mechanical handling process, right? So some investigation and researcher shows that on a skeletal system such as in the spine, elbow joints, knee joints, etc. While lifting the load, lumbar discs are affected much. So the main effect is on the lumbar disc. So why it is, then how to avoid it? So there are some points or guidelines. So from this diagram also you can understand how to lift a particular load. Now in this diagram or picture, it is clearly showing that it is a rectangular or square box having a good grip or handle. So this position is wrong, and if you check this picture, it is a correct position, right? So your bones, especially spinal cord, should be in a straight so that you can easily lift this material with the force, and if the position is good, then the forces and the torque does not affect with the help of these types of heavy loads. So there is no sprain or pain on the spinal cord or the lower back or the lumbar disc if you are going to follow the good techniques which is given by the expert. So these are the different guidelines again how to lift the load. So from this diagram you can understand what exactly the position should be, what is the distance of these two legs, how to lift these material or the box, and the force should be on the legs. So you are going to lifting the load with the help of legs, and then your back should be straight, and then you can easily lift and carry these loads, and you can move these loads to an appropriate position. So lift with your legs and not your back. That is the main conclusion from these points, right? So the lifting system of this spine can be represented as a double arm lever arrangement. So we have already discussed that when you are lifting the material, when you are carrying the material with the help of human body, then human body acts as a machine, and with the help of lever mechanism they are going to carry these loads, right? So the force of the back muscles is applied to the ends of the spinal process, which are about 5 centimeter long according to the principles of this lever, because we have referring this lever mechanism. The force exerted by the back muscles must be 8 or more times the resistance represented by the load. So whatever the load is there, so 8 times the resistance, the force exerted. So with the help of this principle, we can easily carry out the principle. We can easily lift the material and carry out this material to an appropriate position. The strain borne by the disc exceeds the exerted by the back muscles by an amount equal to the weight of the load. So we have to calculate these strain, stress, force, torque, and with reference to the particular person's health, we have to do this activity, and only after calculations and only after the confidence that the person can easily carry out these loads, we have to give the orders. It has been noticed that on men between 20 to 35 years, a disc stress of over 30 kg per meter square can be damaging. So the stress should be less than this 30 kg per meter square. And you can understand, you can understand or observe the range of this age. So normally when manual handling is there, the young persons, that is normally between 20 to 35 years age persons, are only handling these types of materials. So there are some safe methods of lifting and handling, because due to this manual handling or manual lifting of this material, there are some physiological stresses and some accident can occur. So to minimize these physiological stresses and accident, we have to follow some safe methods for lifting and handling. So some persons are careless, some persons are following some wrong guidelines, wrong manual load, and that can cause an injury to the spinal column and adjacent muscles, particularly in the lumbar regions. So we have already discussed these things. And if the load is more, if the person's health is not good, then it can also cause a pulse rate rise, blood pressure rise, brain hemorrhage, and abdominal hernia, back pain, and choice of abdominal organs. So these are the indirect effects of heavy load or wrong practices or careless nature of the persons, and this is the long-term effects due to the manual handling. So for these purposes, to avoid these things, we have to follow some safe methods. The main problem is with the back pain. So if you are careless, if you are not following the good practices or the key points which is given by the expertise, then the back pain is the major issue in most of the industries. And one of the researcher shows that after researching these things with the help of 1200 Swedish workers, they observed that near about 20% of absenteeism of the workers is due to the back pain. And there are some cases of premature retirements due to this back pains. So this back pain may be a chronic disorder, and which is due to the wrong practices or wrong manual load of handling of these materials. So further research has shown a close relationship between the forces acting on the lower back and pressure generated in the abdominal activity. So back pain is one of the main issues, and after next research, they are also showing that lower back and pressures are generated in the abdominal cavity. So if it is the case, then they found that excess of 100 mm of Hg is present in the abdominal pressure. So this much of pressure or excess pressure is generated in the abdominal cavity, and it had significantly high incidences of back pain. So depending on your movement, depending on your practices, these cases may rise. So there are safe methods. So we have to follow these steps for kinetic methods for lifting to avoid the back pain or lower back pain or abdominal pressures. 1 foot ahead of other in the direction of the movement. Then grasp the load from the palm and not from the root of the finger. Then keep back straight, not necessarily vertical. Keep the load close to the body. So these are the main guidelines before lifting the material. So then start the lifting with the thrust of the rear foot, keeping the object close to your body as you lift with your legs, not with your back. So the main thing is you are going to lift that material with the legs, not your back. If you are going to lift this material with the back, then lower back pain is the main issue. Keep the head in correct position. It is also necessary to keep the center of gravity of the load as near as possible. So you have to have the knowledge about the center of gravity, that is the center of your body, so that you can easily balance your body with that weight. The feet should be placed close to the load and proper space for body balance. Back straight and as nearly vertical as possible. So you have to try this. Back should be straight and nearly vertical. Elbows as straight as possible. Knees bent until the hands reach the proper place for gripping the load. So this is the conditions. So most of the workers are not following these things, and that is why this back pain may be the issue. So you have to try to keep the back straight, elbows as a straight, and then knees also in a straight, and only knees can be bent when the proper place is found for gripping the load. Grasp the load firmly. Lift should be completed by straightening the knees, keeping the load close to the body. So while putting down the load, above procedure should be reversed, and bending up to the ground load should be avoided. Support at the tip level 3 to 4 feet is necessary. So we have to place this material or these boxes etc. at a particular height rather than at a ground level. If it is not possible or not feasible, or there is no facility to keep these loads on a particular height, then again you can follow the same procedure in a reverse direction for keeping this material at a ground. So these are some of the do's and don'ts. You can observe easily that with the help of these pictures, you can easily understand how to lift the material when it is a box like material. So do lift bulky or heavy loads as a team. So when heavy materials are there, the box size is more, then you can have a team of 2, and if it is more bulky material, then you can have a more than 2 persons team. So it is the first diagram, which is easily from this diagram easily understand that there are 2 persons who are lifting these materials, and doing is so is smart and safe way to work. So do move your legs and feet when turning or lowering the load. Avoid twisting at your best. So back should be straight. Then do lift the load using your powerful legs and buttocks muscles. Your feet should be wide apart, load and back upright. So keep abdominal muscles tight and the load in close. Then use equipment if it is not possible to carry the load. If it is the distance is more or the material is heavy, then you can go for the equipment. So these are the don'ts if the back is not straight, and if the material is bulky, then lift bulky loads alone. It is not recommended, so that these 2 persons are lifting these heavy materials. So twisting is not recommended again. Then don't use your back to lift the material. You have to use the legs to lift the material, and don't lift the heavy material. Don't carry this heavy material on the back, because this lower back again feels the pain. So lower back or spinal cord or twisting, due to these twistings, so there may be some pains. So you have to follow these do's diagrams for the lifting or carrying these materials. So these are the correct lifting techniques. So we have already talked about. So this is the simple diagram which can suggest you how to lift the material with the help of legs, so that the force or the weight is applied on the legs rather than the back. So these are the different pictures which are showing that how to lift the material, which personal protective equipments must be used to lift to carry and to place these materials. So there are hand gloves, helmets, safety shoes, etc. So these are the safety precautions while manual handling. So we have to follow all these guidelines for handling the materials in manual way. So movement should be in a horizontal plane. Push and pull is preferable than lift or lower. So if there is a facility so that we can easily push or pull this material, then we must prefer this push and pull rather than the lift or lower. Before lifting, the distance to be traveled and the time of grip should be considered. So your grip should be strength. Lifting or lowering should be between knuckle height and shoulder height. It should be close to and front of the body. So always keep that particular material or that box close to your body. Bending or twisting of the body causes overexertion injuries. So there is a recommendation to avoid this bending or twisting movement of your body. Material should be light, compact and safe to grasp. It should not have sharp edges, corners or pinch points. So these are the physical hazards which can damage to your body parts due to while handling or lifting these materials. Material from bin or container should be easily removable. The operator needs to dive into the container to reach the material. Containers of chemicals should be properly closed to avoid the chemical hazards, to avoid the chemical risk, to avoid the chemical spillage, or the vapors or the fumes can be generated from these containers if it is not properly closed. So when you are going to handle these chemical containers, that should be properly closed. If load is too heavy, use mechanical lifting device. So don't go for the manual handling. So you have to go for the mechanical handling when the load is too heavy. Get the load close to the body and feet also close to the body. Stand in the stable position with the feet pointing in the direction of movement. Lift mostly by straightening the legs. Temperature of the material, floor and work area should be comfortable. The floor should not be slippery. So that is also one of the case, and that is why some mats or some surfaces specially designed for these types of material handling or lifting facilities. Use proper hand, eye, leg protection and a respirator if necessary. So wherever these person protective equipments are required, you have to go for these types of PPEs. Keep hands free from oil and grease. Clean the material if it is slippery or dirty. So before carrying or handling or conveying this material manually, you have to observe that there is no oil or oil type materials on the floors. Handle with firm grip. Keep fingers away from pinch and shear points. Don't lift or lower awkwardly or by twisting the back or bending the sideways or by extending the arms. Don't continue if the load is too heavy. So keep in mind that if the load is too heavy, then we have to adopt the mechanical lifting rather than the manual lifting. So we can easily follow these guidelines for the safe manual handling. Then there are some points before handling these materials in a manual way. So we have already discussed that workers should be trained for correct manual handling. They should know the weight of the lifted. So whether it is 20 kg, 30 kg, 40 kg or 50 kg. So that weight should be known to that worker. Position of the center gravity should be known to that worker so that we can easily balance your body with your weight. Their capacity to lift. So some persons are having the low capacity to lift, some persons are having the high capacity to lift. So depending on the capacity of that person, we have to go for that material lifting. Distance to be carried, so that may be in terms of feet or meters. So how much distance is there to carry this material from one point to another point? So that should be known to that worker. Then physical hazards of the material should be known to the worker, like sharp edges, size, brittle, slipperiness, greasiness, etc. So if there is oil or grease or some slippery material on the floor, so that should be clean. And if there is a sharp edges or if the size is different than the regular one, then how to lift this material, how to carry this material, so that guideline should be followed. So all these things should be known to the worker before handling this material. And if depending on the material or packing, if there is a requirement of specific PPs like hand gloves, shoes, or some ropes, etc., then we can ask for this personal protective equipment before handling this material. And you have to specially take care while handling these types of chemical containers or chemical boxes. Then there is a guideline for the teamwork in lifting. So if the heavy load is there, if the load is beyond the one man's capacity, then you have to engage more than one persons, and that is nothing but the teamwork. So the team worker should ensure that load is within their total capacity. So depending on their lifting capacity of an individual person, they have to calculate first whether this load can be carried out by them or not, or whether they have to ask some additional persons to carry these materials. So team worker should be nearly equal to height, size and physique, and the lifting should be done simultaneously. If necessary, one should act as a leader or a single mind to guide others. So if it is possible, then you can prefer the same height, same weight, or same lifting carrying capacity persons for lifting this type of material when you are working as a team member. So these are the guidelines to follow these manual handling lifting these guidelines, and this picture shows you that there are two persons who are handling these types of material. So in one case there is a cylindrical containers, that is nothing but the barrels, and here boxes are there, but these are the heavy materials. So depending on the condition, depending on the requirement, where to carry and what exactly the distance is there, or what at what height this material should be carried. So depending on the requirement, we have to follow some of the safety guidelines to lifting and carrying these materials. So if the material is not a regular object, normally we are only talking about the rectangular or square boxes, and sometimes we have talked about the cylindrical drums. So if depending on the size and shape of the objects, we have to follow some different guidelines. So there are some guidelines for lifting and carrying of the different objects. So if the boxes and cartoons are there, then grasp them at opposite top and bottom corners and draw a comma between the legs. So we have to follow these guidelines while handling these boxes and cartons. If there are barrels and drums, then two men stand on opposite side, grasp both chimes near the high point up, and while pressing down the bottom and straighten up with the drum. If there are handling on incline, so if it is not the flat surface, then use ropes and tackles. So to control motion, pass a rope around the drum. One end of the rope should be fastened to the platform at higher level. A worker keeps a firm grip on the free end, then gradually lower a raise the drum along the risers. So these are the guidelines while handling on the incline. So to avoid the material to fall down on the floor, we have to go for these guidelines. Then while handling the sheet metals, handle with the leather gloves, hand leathers or gloves with metal inserts because of sharp edges and corners. So we have to uh, focus on the grips. We have to focus on the sharp edges while handling these types of sheet metals. Then sheet glass. So we have to again have the PPs like gloves or hand leather, covers wrist and forearms with long leather sleeves, leathers or canvas apron, and guards for feet and ankles should be worn. Carry the glass sheets with the bottom edge resting in the palm turn outward and with the die other hand holding the top edge to steady it or balance it. So there are different guidelines while handling the sheet metal and while handling the sheet glass. So depending on the type of material, depending on the shape and size of the material, there are different guidelines. If the long objects are there, then what should be the guideline to lift and carry? Long pipes, bar stocks, lumber should be carried out over the shoulders with the front head held as high as possible to prevent striking. Other employees should guide when going around corners because while carrying these long objects on our shoulders, we have to take care about the other persons who are nearby you because the distance and the length of that object should be considered while walking. So these are some of the different objects and their methods to lift and carry. If the object is irregular, then it is difficult to handle because if its shape or weight assistance should be given. So we have to take care about these irregular objects. Then metal scrap, wear goggles, gloves or hand leathers, safety shoes and skin guards. Workers should be cautioned against tripping or slipping on objects which may roll or slide under feet. So this is mainly done by the mechanical handling, but if it is not the case, then you have to handle manually with more precautions. So heavy machines, round, flat objects, etc. need specially trained workers, specially designed truck, trolley or devices are required. So from the picture, it can be easily understood that these types of trolleys can be used to handle these types of materials, right? So you can easily observe this much of material easily carried out by this person with the help of this trolley. Then there are some accessories which can be used for safe manual handling. So these are some of the accessories. So that is hooks, crowbar, rollers, etc. Hooks, danger of glancing of hard objects. So if there are hard objects, then you can go for the hooks. When carried in belt, the point should be covered. Sharp point necessary for handling bags, logs, crates, boxes, etc. should be protected. So you can go for handling these type of material with the help of these hooks. Then crowbar, main hazard is slipping. Point or edge should be have a good bite, proper position of hand and body to minimize chances of hand pinching or worker falling if the bar slips. So never work astride a crowbar when not in use. Keep on a track. So if you are going to use this, it is mainly used to avoid the slipping hazard. Then there are some rollers. Heavy or bulky objects are often moved on the rollers because these rollers can easily minimize your main force or the weight and easily carried out from one point to another. So the main hazard is fingers or toes getting pinched or crushed between these rollers and the floor or the roller and the object. When the direction of the roller is changed, to move or roller under the load, use a sledge or a bar, never hand or foot. So you have to take care while handling these types of rollers because they are going to rotate, and if they are going to rotate, then there are chances of tracking some of the objects or the body parts between the two rollers. But it is really useful to use these hooks, crowbars or rollers for handling these types of materials. There are some other accessories which can be used for manual handling. So hand trucks and wheelbarrow. It is mostly 4 or more wheels. Now there are different designs having some 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 6 wheels, 8 wheels, etc. So depending on your requirement, depending on the floor conditions, depending on the weight of the objects, depending on the object shape and size, these types of hand truck can be used to lift and carry out the materials. So knuckle guards to protect jamming of hand against door frames or other obstructions. So these knuckle guards are used. Wheel should be under the truck if possible to save injuries to toes and feet. Wheel guards are preferable. Provide brakes to avoid holding a truck with a foot on a wheel or axle. Inspect daily, keep in good repair. So you have to take care, you have to maintain, you have to repair these hand trucks, and you have to supervise these hand trucks on a regular basis. No one truck is right for handling all types of materials because these materials may have different shapes, may have different weights, and depending on that material, these specific trucks are appropriate for a specific objects only. Loader should keep their feet clear of wheels. Load should be so placed that it will not shift, fall off, or block clear view ahead. On two-wheelers, center of gravity of load should be placed well forward. Four-wheeler should be pushed and not rolled. So sometimes you have to pull, sometimes you have to push depending on the requirement. Avoid collisions, especially at blind corners. So there are some cases if the height or length of that object is more, then they may create a blind corners ahead of you or sometimes on the side of that hand trucks. So use mirror at corner wherever necessary. Then this is one of the accessory to handle the material, that is hand trolley. So it has mostly 3 to 4 wheels, cover floor holes or remove bumps and make it even to prevent the trolley from jumping. Provide rubber tires on wheels to minimize noise and damage to flooring. So you can understand what exactly the hand trolley is. Nowadays we are using in the malls also, on the railway stations, on the public places, etc. The load should be evenly distributed to prevent tilting. Don't overload trolleys, it is unsafe. Load height on trolleys should not obstruct vision. Secure load on trolleys with ropes, stay blocks, etc. wherever necessary. While going up on slope, pull up the trolley and while going down on the slope, push down the trolley. So depending on the slope, there is a pull and push activity. Trolley hand should be held at the front or not on the sides to avoid knuckles getting bruised to the contact with wall or machine, etc. If the trolley handles are to be held on sides, provide knuckle guards. Pathways should be clearly marked in white or colored lines. So these pathways and markings or painting on the floor is also essential for avoid the accidents or incident while handling these types of materials. So park trolleys in such a way that they do not obstruct passageways, and that is why these markings or painting is essential in the industry. Then there is another accessories called as jack. So in some of the industries, these jacks are available. In each and every industry, there is no requirement of jack. But if nowadays, these jacks are used in the four-wheelers, right? So these jacks are designed for the material handling. So an identifying plate showing lifting capacity should be visible. It should be painted or marked on it and never be exceeded. So maximum weight should be marked on the jack. If hydraulic fluid leaks, that jack should be removed from the use. So there should not be oil or grease on the floor, or the leakage should be avoided. If there is a leakage, then that jack should be repaired or maintained, and that jack which is under maintenance should be uh, avoid to use for the handling purpose. Jack should be lubricated only at points required. They should not be thrown or dropped. The resting floor should be checked for load bearing capacity and level. A hardwood insert should be used between the jack head and the load to avoid the metal to metal contact. After the load is raised, metal or heavy wooden stands should be placed under it for support and risk of lax slipping or falling. So normally when we are handling the metal objects, then we have to use some hardwood to avoid the metal and metal contact. To raise the large size load, two or more jacks should be used, but they should be equally raised. So similar types of jacks, similar capacity, similar dimensions like length, height, width, etc. should be used while raising the large size load if you are going to use two or more than two jacks at a time. Workers should be wear the safety shoes while handling these types of jacks. Oil spillage should be clean before and after the work. So these are some of the guidelines how to handle the jack for material handling and lifting. Now, up till now, we have discussed about how to lift, how to carry, how to handle the material, how to handle the different objects, how to avoid the physical hazards, how to avoid the accident, how to avoid the leakages or spillages, how to clean the floors, how to maintain the resistance between these wheels of some of the trolleys or hand trucks, etc., to avoid the accidents. Now, this slide shows you how to store and handle the material carefully. Now, we are going to focus on the storage. So, the floor conditions and safety in storage and loading, unloading are important. So, normally storing activity mainly includes load and unload. So, stacking and unstacking also another part. So, before that, how to load and unload and how to store this material. So safety in storage of this material, first point is bag materials. So the picture clearly shows you what exactly the bag is. So normally these types of bags like 25 kg, 50 kg, 100 kg bags are there in most of the industries. And nowadays we are also using 100 kg, 500 kg and 1 ton bags also. But their purpose is different. Generally, these 25 and 50 kg bags are used in most of the industries. So cross ties with mouth inside when pile is 5 feet high. Step back by one row for each additional 3 feet. Do not remove a bag from a lower row. First, prevent fire risk. So depending on the bag material, depending on the material inside that bags, there may be some different hazards. So depending on the type of material, depending on the properties of material, we have to take care about these types of hazards. So we have to avoid the hazards like fire or the hazards like fall of these bags and on a single side. So for that purpose, we have to take care while unloading these bags from the trucks or from the different equipments or the hoist and cranes, and how to stack this material. Then you have to follow these guidelines. If there is a pipe and bars, then how to stock these materials? So from this picture you can easily understand that you have to consider the strength of the floor, you have to consider the strength of that particular racks, you have to consider the length of the bars, you have to consider the thickness, the weight of that bars or the pipe, and then only you have to design the bar rack or the pipe rack. And if you have to keep the distance between these racks also. So we have to design these types of pipe and bar racks depending on your materials, properties and their dimensions. Now, if the barrels and drums are there, then pyramid shape is safe bottom. Row should block when stack on sides. If piled on ends, then that is upright. Plank should be laid between the rows, and strength of the drum, its size, shape and weight should also be considered. So depending on the barrel size, depending on the drum size, we have to consider these type of racks. We have to consider the type and material and strength of these platforms, right? So these types of platforms should be designed in a such a way that the forklift trucks can easily lift these drums or the barrels easily, and they can easily carry out from one point to another. So depending on the type of material, depending on the size of barrels and drums, depending on the material inside the barrels and drums, we have to follow these types of guidelines. If the metal sheets and plates are there, then they are fairly standard size. They can be safely stacked up to 2-meter height and with buttons between each bundle. Sheets of random size should be stored in toast racking form. Heavy steel plates of more than 4 feet width should be laid horizontally with plates of varying size. The largest one should be at the bottom, and then accordingly you can pile up. So the smallest one is on the top and largest one is on the bottom. That is a general guideline. So from these pictures you can easily understand how to store these metal sheets and plates. So if it is a standard size or a single product is there in your company, then it is easily design these types of rack systems for storing these metal sheets and plates. So if there are different sheets, different sizes or the dimensions, then you can also uh, follow these types of racks. So these metal sheets or plates are placed in a horizontal position in this picture, and it is in the vertical picture in this racks. So depending on the requirement, depending on the space available in your storage department, we have to follow these types of guidelines. Then if it is a long objects, a pile of lumber, bamboo, timber, etc., that should not be more than 20 feet high. Tie pieces are needed not only to stabilize the pile but also to provide air circulations. So sometimes we have to maintain the minimum moistures, minimum humidity in that particular material, and for that purpose air circulation is also necessary. These pieces should not extend much into gangways. If there is a cartoons, then loaded cartoons should be stored on platform or shelves to protect against moisture or breakage. When the sides are unequal size, the tire should be laid as to give natural bonding and provide the stability. If natural bonding is not possible, then we have to provide artificial bonding by sheet or wrapping paper placed between the two layers. So we have to wrap the papers between the two layers if it is not possible as a natural bonding. So depending on the material, we have to follow these types of practices. So if there is a paper reels, then forklift truck can be preferred, and the forklift truck can easily handle these types of materials. Now forklift can be used to store these reels on ends. For stacking on ends, a well-level floor is essential and the reel should be of the same diameter. If it is of the same diameter, then we can easily design these grips of this forklift, because these forklift trucks are having different grips, different designs, and for this particular type of reels or these paper reels, we can opt for this forklift trucks. So if the diameter is same, then we can carry these materials in an easy way and with less time. So from this picture, you can easily understand how to stack these materials with the help of forklift. Then if the liquid chemicals are there, so liquid chemicals normally store or pack in drums, barrels or carboys. So we have to take care about the proper closing of these barrels, drums or carboys to avoid the spillage, to avoid the chemical hazards, and we have to also take care about the moisture conditions or the humidity, because there are chances of corrosions, and in some of the cases the chemicals are also having the property of corrosive. So corrosive chemicals are also used in some of the industries, and they are also going to packed in the drum barrels or carboys, and we are also to follow the guidelines to avoid the corrosion in that area. So for transporting these types of drums, barrels and carboys, we have to prefer the trolley. Safe way to empty carboy is to move liquid by suction from vacuum pump. So after placing that particular drum or barrel, we have to unload these chemicals, that is liquid chemicals, with the help of vacuum pump or start the siphon. So siphon, with the help of the siphon principles, that is inverted U-tube, we can easily unload these liquid chemicals from that drums. Then if the gas cylinders are there, then cylinder may be rolled on the bottom edge but never dragged. Carry cylinders in a cradle or in a suitable types of carrying devices. So from this picture you can understand these gas cylinders can be rolled, and this cylinder normally is in the upright positions. So the gas cylinder rule 2004 and 16 always gives us the guidelines to place to store this gas cylinder in a upright position and with specific lock positions. So to avoid these uh, accident due to these cylinders, to avoid the imbalancing of these gas cylinders, we have to lock this cylinder with the help of some chain locks. So these are the different guidelines. Up till now we have discussed about the how to handle, how to store these materials with the help of some guidelines, with the help of some materials, with the help of some equipments. Now in this storing of material, these two parts are also important, that is called as stacking and unstacking. So when the products are made in the industry, the final stage is packing, and after packing they are going to store these materials or the product in a final storage department. So how to stack and where to stack is the first point, and why uh, selling this product we have to unstack this material. So what are the safety guidelines for this stacking and unstacking? So these are some of the guidelines for stacking and unstacking. Neat and orderly stacking and unstacking minimize hazards and conserve space. So nowadays we are using the robots for stacking and unstacking of these materials. Nowadays we are using computerized systems and software for stacking and unstacking. So if you observe the stacking and unstacking in the malls, the large scale malls or the large scale companies are always prefer this computerized system for stacking and unstacking to avoid the accidents, to avoid the hazards. Materials piled haphazardly increase accidents and damage to the materials. Planned material storage reduces time to bring raw materials into production and to remove finished products from the production. So depending on the material type, we have to plan accordingly. If there is a raw material storage, then inventory for this raw material is different one, the location may be different one, and stacking and unstacking guidelines may be different. If there is intermediate storage, if there is a final storage, then the guidelines may be different. So depending on the type of material, the size of packing, the physical hazards may be present in that material. So on that basis, we have to follow the practices. Loading and unloading areas and SLs should be kept clear. That is, no material should be stacked there. SL's width should allow for the turning radius of any power truck to be used. This area must be marked or painted with the lines. So we have already discussed these things, that these lines or marking or painting on the floor as well as on the sides is very essential, and is which is the guidelines for the workers for loading and unloading these materials. Racks, stands, shelves, platforms and bins should be provided to facilitate storage and reduce the hazards. Example, bromine bottles on shelves, damaged racks should be repaired soon, workers should not climb racks. So we have to easily store or put this material or place this material in that racks or shelves without climbing on the racks. So with the help of some forklift trucks, with the help of some other trucks, or with the help of some equipment which is easily place this material in that particular place, that should be preferred. Height indicating line should be painted on wall to show maximum limit of stacking. This helps keep the floor load within the limits and sprinkler heads in the clear. High rack storage requires unique, specially designed and high lift handling equipment. Up to 30 feet heights manually operated, and for more height, computer controlled equipments are available. So audible and visual warnings on moving equipments are necessary. So nowadays we are facing the problem of space, we are facing the problem of floor space or the floor area requirement, and that is why we are placing these materials, we are stacking this material vertically more as compared to the horizontal, and that is why, that is one of the reason that we are preferring this computer control equipment rather than the manual handling. Toxic materials should not be stacked with flammable materials. So while storing this material, while stacking these materials, we have to check the compatibility of the materials. So which material is compatible with other one, that should be stacked in a single place. Otherwise, we have to avoid these materials to stack in a single place. So depending on the compatibility data, we have to prefer that particular material in that particular place only. So this picture clearly shows you how to stack the materials, what are the techniques, what is the height of stacking, how to stack the material, and what are the support systems on the sideways of these racks or shelves. Then there is another point that is called as floor and layout conditions. So we have already discussed that while handling the material manually or mechanically, the floor conditions should be clear so that there should not be any accident or hazards or slippery conditions. So floor, depending on the load and type of operation, the conditions of the floor such as clean limeness. So we have to clean these oils, greases or oil-like material to avoid the slippage. Then absorptive qualities, marking on the floors, that may be a painting, that may be some other marking, that may be a particular marking with the help of waxes, etc. Then color should be used. So in most of the cases, yellow color and black color is always used for marking on the floors while handling these types of materials. Non-sparking of static dismantling properties should be used. So that is depending on the material type. If it is a flammable or explosive materials, then we have to use the non-sparking equipments or tools for handling these types of materials. Then durability will give great effect on material handlings. So the floors should have these types of properties and the guidelines to avoid any type of hazards or accidents. Walls, generally walls are not retaining walls, therefore load should not be stacked against walls or leaning to wall. A clearance of 18-inch from wall facilities, inspection of stacks and avoid stack touching the walls. Construction of stacks, height base ratio, size, shape, bulk, weight, type, rigidity and fragility of material and availability of space influence the size of the stacks. Normally, height should not exceed 3 times the narrower width. So these are the guidelines for constructing the stacks. So we have to take care about all these dimensions and the properties of the stacks. Then lighting. So obviously adequate lighting should be there in that area so that we can easily understand how much space is available in that stacks, where exactly the space is available, and whether these types of material or packing or barrels or drums can be placed in that particular available space or not. So lighting is essential. There are various types of lightings available. Light fittings are also available, and this should be selected and used for the specific work areas. So the required levels of illumination for different operations are given. So for storeroom, there is a different requirement of illumination. For godowns, yards, workrooms, and places of material handling should be properly illuminated. So these guidelines are also available in the OSHA's 18001. Ramps gradient should not exceed 1 in 10. It should not be slippery, uneven, or broken. It should have a sufficient width. So these are some of the guidelines for floor and layout conditions. Then other guidelines in these floor and layout conditions are obstructions. So we already discussed that the area where we have to stack this material, we have to store these materials, that area and the pathways should be free from the obstructions. So these pipes, conduits, drains, walls, fire apparatus, etc. are necessary parts of plant structure, yet they often cause hazards. So even if these points are essential, the walls, conduits, pipes, etc. are some fire extinguisher or fire apparatus, but they should not create as an obstruction in the pathway. In planning the plant, such parts should be so placed that they may cause minimum interference with the persons or the materials. So we have to avoid the obstructions in the pathways or the space where we are going to stack or the store these materials. Then we are going to use the ladders. Do not climb on the stockpiles. So for avoiding these climbing on the racks, climbing on the shelves, etc., we have to use these ladders. So fixed ladders are preferable one. If the height exceeds 2 meter, provide railing and hand tools pockets for the ladders. So if the ladders are not sufficient, then we can go for the other types of portable ladder rather than the fixed ladder. Then portable ladder should have non-slip base, or its bottom should be held tight or securely anchored to prevent the slipping. So main thing is we have to avoid the slipping with the help of fixed ladder or the portable ladders. Then there are bridge plates are also available that should be have adequate strength and they should always properly anchored. Now, while handling, lifting, carrying these material, while storing, stacking on unstacking these material, there is one important point that is called as ergonomic. So we must think about the ergonomic points while handling these types of material, while storing these types of material. So ergonomics word include the ergo and nomics. So it is work related activities and the safety aspects while handling, while storing these types of material. So ergonomics, human factors or human engineering is the study of human characteristics for the appropriate design of the living and work environment. Human characteristics include capabilities, limitations, motivations, and desires. Hence, ergonomics is human-centered, transdisciplinary, and application-oriented science. Actually, it also involves the anthropometry. Means while material handling, while storing the material, while handling the different types of trucks or trolleys, we have to check the capabilities of that persons, and for that capabilities we have to check the dimensions of that person also. So while checking the dimensions of this person, it means the height of that person, weight of that person, then the different dimensions of the fingers because the grips are essential. Then we have to check the dimensions and the strength of the forearms, the shoulders, the back, etc. So all these included in the biomechanics and anthropometry, that is the part of that ergonomics. So we have to take care or think of psychology, physiology, biomechanics, anthropology, science and engineering. So these are the different disciplines of the ergonomics. So while lifting, while carrying, while handling, while storing these types of materials, we have to think of all these things. So these things are included in the ergonomic study. So work physiology takes into account capacity of the physical work and its energy cost, heart rate at work, matching people and their work, rating the perceived effort, work or rest cycles and fatigues. So we have to take care if the heavy loads are carrying by the team or team members, then we have to follow some rest cycles. So after 2 hours, after 1 hour, there should be some mini break for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, etc. So depending on the condition, we have to check the physiology also. If that is not the case, then there may be a fatigue, and due to fatigue, we know that there may be more chances of incident or accident. So this anthropometry, we have already talked about that human body dimensions are there, and with the help of this anthropometry, we can easily understand what exactly the biomechanics is. So with the help of fingers, with the help of thumb, how to grip and what exactly the capacity of that person to handle, to lift that material, that can be explained with the help of this anthropometry and biomechanics. So depending on the strength of that human body, we can decide how much weight can be lifted by that persons, right? So depending on the muscle strength and its working method, we can easily decide the manual material lifting and handling capacity of that persons. So this ergonomic study is very important before finalizing the persons or the team members for lifting, carrying and storing of the materials manually. So 4 keys explained by Kroemer for ergonomics of manual handling. These are follows. Improved facilities of good layout provides safe and efficient material transfer. So good layout is one of the key factor. Then job or task design should consider the stress on the worker and should decide whether to assign certain tasks to a person or a machine. Because in some cases there are heavy loads, there are some cases the loads are not heavy but the irregular objects are there. In some cases there are some physical hazards present with that object, and that is why depending on the condition we can decide whether that object or that material should be carried by the person or should be carried by that machine. Then selection, use and improvement of equipment, machines and tools strongly affect material handling requirements. Space requirements, control device, visibility, color, sign coding, etc. should be considered. So all these points we have already discussed. Then system must be designed for people as they are kingpins of material handling. Their body size, strength and energy capability should be considered. So these are the 4 key points which is explained by Kroemer for ergonomics of manual handlings. So we have to follow these points, we have to consider these points before ordering the persons for the manual handling of these materials. So these are the different points which we have discussed in this presentation, that is kinetics of manual handling, what exactly the maximum load should be carried out, then lifting and carrying of objects of different shapes, size and weight, safe use of accessories for manual handling, storage of material, safety in stacking and unstacking, floor conditions, floor loading conditions, layout conditions, then safety in storage, and lastly we have discussed about the ergonomics of manual handling and storage. Thank you.